In the sun-drenched city of Miami, the RB20, Red Bull's formidable racing machine, endured a weekend fraught with challenges. The once seemingly invincible team showed signs of vulnerability as other teams began to close the gap. The McLaren team, in particular, showcased an impressive mid-season development, while Ferrari instilled hope with their promising upgrades at Imola, which they boldly touted as race-winning enhancements. This begs the question, has the championship race truly begun? And more importantly, is Red Bull now at risk of losing at least one of the championships? The Miami Grand Prix was far from a triumphant event for the Austrian team. The primary issues were time management and an ill-timed safety car deployment. This unfortunate combination not only gave Lando Norris of McLaren an advantage in terms of tire change, but also resulted in a blunder that saw the safety car go in front of Max Verstappen rather than Norris. This gave Norris a comfortable lead, which he maintained with ease. Verstappen, known for his tenacity, and Red Bull, dominant as they have been in 2024, were expected to recover quickly. However, Verstappen trailed for an extended period and was unable to catch up with Norris or even maintain a close distance. Norris finished the race with a significant lead of more than 7 seconds. Meanwhile, Perez struggled to keep pace with both Ferraris and found himself in an unusual duel with Hamilton. All things considered, it was a less than stellar weekend for a team that is typically accustomed to dominating in a 1-2 fashion. What is crucial to note here is that the race pace was the real game changer for McLaren. Even on medium tires, Verstappen was unable to significantly outpace Piastri, who maintained a respectable deficit of 3 seconds behind the Dutchman during the first stint on medium tires. It's also noteworthy that Piastri overtook both Ferrari drivers and kept them at bay, despite having only half the upgrades that Norris had on his car. This suggests that from Imola onwards, McLaren could pose a much larger threat for race wins, similar to what we witnessed in Miami. Verstappen himself expressed concern that this might not be a one-off performance from the Woking-based squad. When asked whether this was the genuine race pace of the McLarens, or if other factors could have played a larger role, Verstappen said he hopes this is not what we are going to see for the remainder of the season. Even Helmut Marko warned us before the weekend began, after the sprint qualifying ended, that the McLarens might inflict more damage to Red Bull than Ferrari. And that's exactly what happened. As I mentioned earlier, McLaren's extensive upgrades seem to have worked wonders. The biggest concern for Red Bull is that only one car with the full upgrade package arrived in Miami. In Imola, both MCL 38ES will be equipped with the same parts, including a new side pod, inlets, front wing, front suspension, revised front brake duct, and a completely redesigned floor that works in conjunction with the new side pod, inlets, and bodywork to increase downforce. For Verstappen, this means that he will likely have to contend with 2 McLaren drivers rather than 1. Even though it sounds bizarre to say it at this point, he was nowhere near fighting with Norris. Even if the safety car scenario had turned out differently, Verstappen himself admitted that he had no chance of catching up to the Brit. What is of paramount importance for Red Bull is how McLaren approached and implemented these upgrades. Looking at all the changes they've made, it's clear that the overtime work in Woking has led to a profound understanding of the dynamic behavior of the car and the airflow that passes underneath it. Therefore, it's not just the new version of the front wing that should be credited for all the success that McLaren had. The geometry of the front suspension also played a significant role because it tends to direct the airflow towards the leading edge of the new floor. On top of that, the tire management was absolutely astonishing, with Norris setting the fastest lap on worn-out medium tires, while Verstappen was struggling behind him on fresh hard tires before the safety car was called into the race. The primary objective of McLaren's upgrades was to address the deficit that the MCL 38 had in slow-speed corners, and we've seen that they've done so successfully. So when Norris and Stella hinted at the possibility that McLaren could fight for race wins this season, they could have warned us that the first win might have come as early as this weekend. This is also bad news for Red Bull from a different perspective. We saw how Perez struggles to keep up with his teammate and the rest of the grid. Instead of battling with both Ferrari drivers on medium tires, while both SF24S were on hard tires, he spent the post-safety car period defending against Hamilton's W15. For Imola, this could be a much bigger issue for Red Bull. If this is the case, then Perez could very well finish outside the top 5 on pure race pace. This is precisely why the Austrian team is keeping their options open when it comes to 2025, when the grid should be much more compacted. As the dust settles on the Miami Grand Prix, it's clear that Red Bull's dominance in the Formula One circuit is under threat. McLaren's impressive performance has already sent shockwaves through the paddock, but they are not the only team that Red Bull needs to keep an eye on. Ferrari is gearing up to unveil the first and most substantial upgrade package of the season at Imola, dubbing it the 2.0 version of their car. Inspired by McLaren's success in Miami, Ferrari is now confident that a race win in Imola is within their grasp. Christian Horner, Red Bull's team principal, acknowledged that an incident at turn 15 in Miami caused some damage to Verstappen's floor. However, it's safe to assume that the damage was not as severe as initially feared, as Verstappen would typically have reported such an issue over the radio. When discussing the upcoming upgrades and expectations for Imola, Horner expressed optimism. He believes that by pulling together all the elements, Red Bull can deliver a better race in Imola. Horner also pointed out that the development of the car has reached a stage where any new additions will not result in significant time gains. Instead of seconds, they are now looking at tenths. He is confident that Red Bull will be competitive in Imola, but he also acknowledges that there is a variable gap that changes from track to track and from compound to compound. This gap, he believes, can have a more significant impact than any update. Therefore, the focus should be on maximizing what they already have. The update they plan to bring to Imola will certainly help, but it's not the only factor. The work they do on the track is equally important. In terms of qualifying, Ferrari has been the closest competitor to Red Bull. McLaren, on the other hand, struggled to understand the behavior of the soft tires, although this was not a significant issue in Miami. Regardless, Red Bull finds itself in a tricky situation. The announcement of Adrian Newey's departure on the same weekend that Verstappen lost a race due to a genuine lack of pace and grip has not helped matters. Verstappen complained over the radio about his inability to turn the car, describing it as a disaster. Red Bull's dominant start to the 2024 season may not continue in the same vein. In the first 6 races, 2 non-Red Bull drivers have already claimed victory. Although Verstappen's brake failure was to blame for the loss in Australia, Jenson Button believes that Red Bull will face competition from not 1, but 2 teams from Imola onwards. McLaren is undoubtedly making strides towards fighting for race wins, which could significantly alter the championship landscape in 2024. Button, the 2009 world champion, praised McLaren's correlation between simulator and on-track data. He noted that the upgrades they introduced last year in Silverstone made a significant difference in the car's development. He believes that in the next couple of races, all eyes will be on McLaren, including those of Red Bull. Not just Ferrari, but McLaren too will pose a challenge to Red Bull. This changes the dynamics significantly, as Red Bull now knows that they will face competition from 2 teams. This will require a shift in strategy and constant vigilance. With all this in mind, it's worth pondering whether Red Bull will indeed face a genuine challenge from McLaren and Ferrari in Imola. More importantly, could there be a situation where Verstappen faces a realistic threat for the championship? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.